Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. So let's have a chat about winter, seeing as it has arrived. All a bit abrupt, but yeah, it's here. I mean, what is it? It's 9 o'clock in the morning, and so far I've only managed 16 degrees C out in the grow room. Now I've separated plants. I have some indoors. These are the ones that I really don't want to get chilled. Yeah, it's Phalaenopsis, my Paphiopedilums. All of my Paphiopedilums are the patterned leaf type, which as a generalisation don't like to get as cold as the plain green-leaved ones. Yeah, but mine are all hybrids, you know, so I'm assuming that their makeup to give them their pattern leaves is based on the more warm growing types. But it's only an estimate. I'm not going into the parentage of every single one of these hybrids to find out if there's a cool grower in there. They all get the same. So in addition to the Phalaenopsis, with one exception, I'll go over that in a minute, my Paphiopedilums, my two Psychopsis, and my Bulbophyllum Phalaenopsis, which is a real warm to hot grower. That's not going to like it in the cold. I don't think it likes much anyway, it's not growing that well. But anyway, so I've got those indoors. Obviously they're in the house. The house never drops down below 17, 18, which is more, and that's at night, and then it comes back up during the day because I'm in it and I don't like being freezing cold. But out here it's a different matter altogether. The nighttime temperatures are now pushing this down. The heater was kicking on and off all night long. Yeah. So my heater is on a thermostat and it's set to 15 degrees with a 1.5 degree differential. So when the temperature gets down to 13.5 degrees C, the heater kicks in and brings it back up to 15 and cuts out again. And I actually, I was watching it earlier today where the temperature was the lowest. It's always the lowest around dawn. Basically, it comes on for about 1 minute 20 seconds, and then it goes off for about between 10 and 15 minutes. So if you multiply that up overnight, which is when it mainly gets used, I do get a bit of temperature in here during the day just naturally. So if you just do the maths, the number of hours during the night, yeah, multiplied by the number of times it kicks in, my heater's not on for a huge amount of time just to keep the chill off. So the expense of keeping the chill off is not that great. You know, that's a 2 kilowatt fan heater, you know, that comes on for 1 minute 20 seconds, maybe 5 times an hour. Yeah, so, you know, let's say, to do easy maths, which is all Roger's little brain can do, let's say it was on for 10 minutes an hour, you know, times 10 hours, you know, it's on for less than 2 hours a night. 2 kilowatt heater. I mean, some people are heating their houses with similar to that, and they'd be on all the time to try and keep the warm, you know. So anyway, the most important things in a UK winter that you need to take account of is watering and feeding. I always put those two together. Your light levels and your temperatures. Yeah. Now at the moment we've dropped down to a day length of 9.5 hours, and on a dull day the amount of light available is not that good, and for quite a low amount. By the end of this month it will be down below 8.5 hours. It's getting quite short. Now on a sunny day, that amount of light is pretty good, yeah? But on dull days, and we get a few of those, it's not so good. I'm not doing artificial lighting. I've lived without it all the time I've been growing orchids. I'm not starting now. I agree that there are some of the plants out here that would do better if their day length was extended with artificial lighting. But just have a think, where would I put the lights? This is the thing, everybody says, why don't you get some lights? Where would they go? Yeah? Well, I'd need one up here, yeah, to get that lot. And then that lot, shade this lot. So I'd need another one under here for this lot. What about the ones down there? Yeah? What about over here? I'd need one up in the roof. Where would I put it? I've got plants in the roof. Yeah? And then what about these down here? Same over here. If I put one up here, it would be in the middle of the vandas, and it might do that shelf. What about all these? So I can't do it. It's just not practical. So that's the lighting out of the way. All you can do is maximise the light available during the UK winter months, and other countries that have similar drop in day length. Yeah, and some get a lot more serious drops in temperature than I do. I mean, to get below freezing in the UK is not that common. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, there's some people have got outdoor temperatures of bloody -10 on a regular basis. You know, that would cost me a fortune in heating. But luckily, in the UK, we've had 2 mild winters on the trot. What we're going to get this year is unknown. And all these people who say, oh, there's a lot of berries on the tree, it's going to be a cold winter. That's just cobblers. Think about when those berries are produced. They're produced in the spring, following the blossom. Now, I know Mother Nature's pretty clever, but I don't think it can predict a cold winter in the spring. It's just cobblers. All it means normally is that the birds haven't eaten them yet. You could say, well, you know, I mean, we get lovely migrants in the winter come over from Scandinavia. We get 2 types of thrush, a fieldfare and accompanied by redwings. And they decimate any berries left lying around in the UK. They've come here because it's too cold where they come from. They've come here to get warm and find some food. And all the sensible ones that live in the south of the UK who know there isn't going to be much food around, you know, they're down around the Mediterranean or in Africa now. You know, they've gone on their holidays for the winter where it's warm. Anyway, so we'll start with watering and feeding. Now, that's going to vary depending on the orchid type, and it'll vary dramatically. Now, I've got some orchids that don't like to dry out. Masdevallias, Restrepias, Miltoniopsis, and some others. Those are the ones that immediately spring to mind. They like this, what's called constantly moist. Yeah, not soggy, not dry. Constantly moist, and quite honestly that is the most difficult thing to achieve, because when you water they're soaking wet. And if you keep doing that, they get soggy. So you've just got to try and be very careful to balance your watering and gear it up to the plant's needs. Is it actively growing? If it is actively growing, despite the shorter day length, yes, it'll slow up, but it's still growing. It's still producing new growths, new leaves, more coffee, and it's actively growing, albeit slower. Well, if it's growing slower, it won't need as much water, but it'll still need some, and all you're probably going to do is adjust the frequency and leave a bigger gap, because it won't use that water as fast. It's as simple as that. And if it's actively growing, it's going to want some feed. And again, it's not going to be growing as fast. So I think it makes sense to reduce the strength of the feed. Yeah? When it's bursting at the seams in the summer, you can up your feed levels and it'll use it. But you do that in the winter, you're liable to get root burn because it can't use that feed because the day length stops it growing as fast or as well as it could be. Okay? So that's water and feed. I'll go into the dendrobiums as a separate case because in my case, with the genera that I've got, I only have one type of orchid that needs some form of distinct rest. And those, not all, are some of my dendrobiums. I haven't got catasetums and some of the other things that go totally dormant. I haven't got them. So I haven't got to worry about them. And I can't advise on those because I've never learnt about them because I haven't got them. I only do my homework on stuff I've got or am about to get. Okay? Now, light levels. Obviously, the day length gets shorter. The light quality goes downhill quite dramatically. To accommodate that, I've already taken the shade netting off of there, and in the afternoon a bit of direct sun comes in just across that little bit of sky there, but at that point it's low in the sky, it's weak, and none of the plants up against that glass will mind that direct sun at that time of day. Yeah, it's low in the sky, western sun, a couple of hours before it sets. There's no strength in it. The same applies to morning sun. Yeah, first couple of hours of morning sun is weak this time of year, and some of your plants may love that. Even in the house, you know, you try and get a south-facing windowsill. Well, you've just excluded the morning sun in the east and the setting sun in the west. Yeah, so you're only going to get that sort of midday sun. And for some plants right up near the glass, that could be a bit too much. So even in the winter, you need to take care with getting leaf burn. Also, if you grow in the house, watch your glass temperature. Watch your windows. Yeah, I know, you know, most people nowadays have got modern windows. They're all double glazed. They're sealed. You get a little man on the telly drops a feather down so that you can see there's no drafts. Well, if I'd just paid for double glazing and there was a draft, they'd come and replace it. But not all houses can say they've got that. I mean, I remember Alberto once. He moved into a new apartment or something along those lines and put all his orchids on a windowsill. And what he didn't realise is it was an old leaky window. And he got a cold, icy blast in through those gaps in the window, and it knocked some of his orchids down. Because he didn't know, he was new to the place. So, you know, your leaves touching the glass when the temperature's below freezing outside will get cold burn. So don't let your leaves touch that glass. Leave a gap, yeah? And the other thing to watch if you grow in a house is curtains. If you grow on, you know, things like nice bay windows and you draw your curtains at night and leave your plants on the outside, you've made a cold chamber for them, yeah? Because all your heat's in behind your curtains where you are, and the plants have been left out in the cold. So think about those sorts of things in the house, yeah? Right, now as far as temperatures are concerned, my minimum temperature out here, as I've said, is 13.5. Now on a bitterly cold night where it gets down to -5, -10, that might drop down a bit more because the heater might not be able to get it up quick enough, if you see what I mean. So I would say an absolute bare minimum out here of 12 degrees C. And everything that's out here can tolerate that, and some of them are gonna love it because they need it. Yeah? Now in previous years I haven't let the temperature get that low. The reason I'm letting it get lower this year is, one, to save the energy bills. I'm not a rich person, I've got a limited income. I haven't got money coming out my ear holes. So there's that side of things, you know, to keep the costs down. But in addition to that, last year I tried resting my suitable dendrobiums up in the spare bedroom. I put them on the windowsill, brightest light available, and kept that room as cool as I could. But quite honestly, the lowest temperature, even with the window open, that I managed to get was 9 degrees C. And most of the time it was up, you know, 15 degrees. It's not a big enough chill really for some of the resting types. So I think they're going to do better in here. And the bonus is they won't get that dry atmosphere. The humidity in here naturally stays high because of the evaporation from the plants themselves and the pots. Yeah? My fogger hardly comes on at all in the winter. Now, well, we've managed to get up to 17 now. I've got 75% humidity. At that temperature, that's plenty. Some may say it's even a little high, because bearing in mind you're talking relative humidity. If there was no additional moisture in here and that temperature rose up 10 degrees, that humidity would drop like a stone. Now in my case, it would be bumped up by the fogger, which would kick in. It's on a hydrostat. So my humidity never drops down what I would call too low. Right, so that's that side of things. Oh, I did say there was an exception. My Phalaenopsis japonica, what was Sedera japonica, look it up. Looks like a normal Phalaenopsis. Well, a not very healthy Phalaenopsis, but it's not dead, it's growing. It hasn't bloomed for quite a while. But you look that one up, you'll find an exception to the rule. That is a cool to cold grower. Yeah, it's not a warm growing Phalaenopsis at all. So that's why that one's out here. Maybe the lighter will bloom now. It's coming into the temperatures now that it actually likes. Yeah, so maybe it'll put a spike up. Now that went into the house last winter and I kept it warm because I knew no better. Well, this year I do. Right, different types of plants, different treatments. I've got kikis and young plants mixed in here. Well, they're not going to get rested in any shape or form. They will get watered at the point they get dry, maybe a bit before. Mounted orchids are of various types, but predominantly my mounted orchids are dendrobiums, but not all of them. I've got 4 Orengis, yeah? They don't really like to get that cold, but don't mind it, won't kill them. But they're not going to stop growing, they're just going to slow up. So, you know, my frequency of watering with those, instead of being every day, went to every other day for a while, and in the coldest periods now, I can go to every 3rd day. They'll be fine. Some of the mounted dendrobiums are going to start slowing up now. So every 3rd day for those, depending on how much moss they've got, might be a bit too much moisture, because it's difficult to, I could, and I may do, I don't know yet, I might go to using the sprayer instead of watering, so that they get a misting around the roots and not an absolute soaking, because the way I water, they get soaked. And those that really do need a distinct rest period, that's probably too much water. But again, it depends on the frequency. I'm not keeping my orchids bone dry. That's not happening. But you get ones like this. These are a pair. This is Jenkinsii. Needs a very distinct chill and a great reduction in water and no feed during the winter, or it won't bloom. Yeah, that's just how it grows. Now that's a cross between Jenkinsii and aggregatum. They both need the same sort of care. Yeah, so it's the same with this. But at the moment, it's still finishing off some new growths. They're not fully matured yet, so I'm having to go careful. They are still getting a bit of feed, even though we're into November now, just to finish off those new growths, just probably for the next 2, maybe 3 weeks, and then the feed will stop, the watering frequency will go right down, and they're already getting their chill. Yeah? So, yeah, it's a game, basically. My Cattleyas, they're going to slow down because of the light. They won't mind the cooler temperatures too much, but they're not going to grow anywhere near as quick because they've lost their, you know, sort of 12-hour, 13-hour day lengths. They've lost it. You know, it's going to come down to, going to drop by a 1/3. So they're going to slow up. If they slow up, they won't need as much water. And it becomes far more important to make sure they are dry before you water them. The wet-dry cycle is far more important in lower temperatures with shorter days and lower light levels. You'll start getting root rot. You keep those wet in cool temperatures. They won't like it. Yeah. What else have we got? A vast array of oncidiums and intergenerics. They don't mind the cooler temperatures at night, but they're not so keen on the short day lengths. They slow up. Some of them may even grind almost to a halt, but they're not stopped. And if they're not stopped, they still need some water and some feed. But I'm quite happy to let my oncidiums and intergenerics get virtually dry or even absolutely dry before I water them. And I've shown you how I water. I absolutely drown the things. That stops from today. And I start moving to what I call my trickle water, where I'll look at the pot. If the whole pot's dry, I'll water it carefully until I see that water move down through the bark and reach the bottom of the pot and just start to come out the bottom of the pot. And at that point, that's enough. As opposed to in the summer where I would chuck loads and loads of water. You know, you may even get 2 or 3 litres through the pot. It's absolutely soaked. Well, I'm not doing that in these low temperatures and short days. So my watering gets careful. The drowning stops and I move to my trickle water. And that's how it will be. Yeah? Now, what else have we got? Restrepias, Masdevallias, most of the Coleogenes, I think, will come into this category. They are continuous growers, but they're going to slow down simply because of the shorter days. So I'll take care with watering, and I'll let them get virtually dry, but try not to let them get absolutely dry. It's a faff, it really is. Right, what else have we got lurking around? Vandas, separate case altogether. In previous winters, I've reduced the frequency of watering dramatically because they slow up. You know, lower light levels, lower temperatures, they virtually come to a stop, but they don't absolutely stop. So, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, they don't need as much water. But that's thinking about the plant. Now, I'm reliably informed now that I dunk mine in buckets, and that should not stop in the winter. Otherwise, all these lovely active root tips will just close over and stop growing. So for the sake of the roots, they're still going to get that complete dunk in the bucket and get absolutely hydrated. The frequency drops. That's every day in the summer. Well, it's already down to every second day. I may try and keep that going and just keep my eye on what's going on. It may go to every third day, but the way they get watered is not going to change. As I said, I've seen these over the years and they just close over, and these growing tips just stop. They go like that one. Yeah, they just close over. And then come the longer days and the better temperatures, you've got to restart them again. Yeah? So there's a delay in getting them going. But by keeping those root tips active and growing on through the winter, you're removing that delay in early spring when they start to move again and the leaves start pushing on a bit quicker. Yeah? So that's what I'm going to do this year. I haven't done it before, but I am this year. They're still going in the bucket. They will still get fully hydrated at least every third day. If we get a mild spell with a bit of sunshine and the temperatures get up, I can switch back to every second day. But it won't be every day. Yeah? Because I don't believe they dry out well enough in a 24-hour period. So that's what I'm doing with the Vandas. Right, Dendrobium types. Many. I have a lot of species. I've got some hybrids lurking. And I've got quite a few different types. I've got Latoria types. I've got Dendrobium phalaenopsis types. They're all hybrids. I've got a few Latoria species. There are what I call long cane dendrobiums, the anosmum types, Friedrichianum, those sort of things. And I've got nobili types. I've got a nobili type that's misbehaving at the moment and decided to bloom in early winter instead of late winter, early spring. Well, there's nothing I can do about it, so, you know, tough. But what it does mean is I won't get anywhere near as many blooms at the beginning of next year because it's used up a lot of the nodes this year. Well, tough. I'm just enjoying the blooms. If that's what it wants to do, then I'm not going to try and stop it. Okay. But I do have some funny dendrobiums. Hercoglossum springs to mind. Now, the way mine grows is the canes have a 3-year cycle. This year's new growths are probably about 12 inches long now. They're not long enough and heavy enough to start arching over and becoming pendulous yet, but they will do. Right? Last year's new growths from the spring have become pendulous and are still growing. and they will carry on growing through this winter. They'll carry on growing through next year. So we've got to go back another year to find out what happens. Okay, so the cycle is new growths in the spring, early summer. Yeah, they will grow on through that year, through that winter, through the following season, through the next winter, and sometime after that, either during the summer or in the autumn, they will drop their leaves. Yeah? So what would happen to those growing canes if I stopped watering them through the winter? You can answer that yourself. Okay, so Phalaenopsis types, Latoria types, and a couple of others, Victoria Virginiae, Moniliform, they all come into a form of continuous growing. Because of the light and the temperature drop, they're going to slow up. So they won't need as much water, but they're still going to get a bit of feed as well because they are still growing slowly. But then there are those that have finished their annual growth and in their natural environment, deciduous forests, the leaves would be coming off the trees now, so their light level would be going up. Also, their nighttime temperatures are dropping down, and the seasonal rains have virtually come to an end. So their amount of moisture they get from rain is going to dramatically drop off. Not going to stop altogether. Doesn't go 3 months without one shower. But the amount of moisture they get is totally dependent on the humidity in the air, fog, mist, and morning dew, which because of the drop in temperatures, because it's a sort of winter, is going to happen. That's nature. It always happens. Yeah? If you've got humidity in the air and the temperature drops, you reach what's called the dew point, at which you get condensation all over everything. And if it gets cold enough, that becomes frost. Yeah? So that's just the world, that's just nature, that's how it happens. Now in some places the humidity isn't high enough and the temperature never gets low enough, so there's never any dew. But in most of the places there is, yeah, especially where a lot of those deciduous dendrobiums come from. So they're not dry. They do get morning dew and they've got humidity in the air, but they've also got lower temperatures and brighter light. That's what I'm hoping to do for those sorts. They're staying in here, that lowers the temperatures. They will stop growing. I will reduce their water at the point they stop growing. Yeah. Some of the longer cane ones, this new cane here, it hasn't actually finished growing, but it is showing signs of being affected by the lower temperatures. It's starting to get a few of the yellower leaves, and the chances are most of the leaves will be gone by late winter. Now obviously with these lower temperatures, it's going to stop growing very soon. Yeah, so that cane is virtually at its full length. This one here, this is not on the same orchid by the way, that one's still growing, yeah, but that's its second year. It's already dropped half its leaves, but it's still got these, and it may drop some more during this winter, unknown. But both of those orchids I've just shown you have both got new growths. If I stop watering, I will lose those new growths. They will stop growing, and that's it. That's as big as they'll get. Is that a good idea? Well, that's where you come to choose. Because if you have got lots of fully matured canes and you want to go for blooms, well, then you might sacrifice a couple of the new growths and stop watering it, reduce it right down, cut the feed, get the light levels up, reduce the temperatures, and go for the blooms. Yeah? That's your choice. We all get to choose. This anosmum here is a new plant this year, and it only grew one cane. But recently it's pushed out 2 more new growths. So my decision on that one is to sacrifice the blooms and grow these canes on and get a better plant. Now this long mature cane here may still bloom, given it's going to get its chill, but I'm not going to stop watering that. I'm reducing it, but I'm still going to feed it as well. Low level, it's not going to grow as fast, but I don't want those new growths to stall. So that's the sort of decisions. There's another dendrobium up here, the hairy monster. This is senile or senile. Now I got this in the middle of the summer, and I thought it was one big plant, but it turned out to be lots of little ones when I mounted it. Well, it's come on well. It's put on a lot of new growths. It's producing roots in many places. That should get a proper winter rest to force it into bloom. Well, it's not going to get it. Not this year. I lost my last one trying to rest it. It objected dramatically to being taken out of the humid atmosphere. It just didn't like it. And it wasn't a strong enough plant to be rested, and nor is this one. So that one will get grown on through the winter. Much reduced water and feed, but I'm not stopping. I want to keep that one growing and get a large, strong plant where I might treat it slightly different next year. But not this year. Tolumnias are nothing more than a renamed type of Oncidium. Where they come from, they don't get winter. That's why people take their winter holidays in the Caribbean, because they don't have any, you know. So you have to bear in mind where things come from, you know. Do they really get a proper winter, or is it just a bit cooler than in the summer, perhaps a bit drier? So have a think along those lines. I've got some orchids that I'm not quite sure about, like this bamboo bush down here. It's got lots of actively growing new bits to it. And it branches naturally, and all the branches are growing as well. So again, I can reduce the frequency of the water, but I'm not going to reduce it right down and let it get absolutely bone dry and not give it any feed, because it's growing. It's just down to that. Is the plant growing? If it is, then it needs some moisture and some feed, albeit at a lower rate. That's that lot. And then we have this exception over here, which is my pot full of Disas. Oh, I'm dreading this. The bloom spikes are dying back now, yeah? And underneath there is like a corm, and that's going to die, and it's going to rot in the pot. And that's not a good idea. These are very sensitive to rot. I've already reduced how wet it is, because normally it's stood in water right through the summer. So I'm actually letting the tray dry out for a day or two before I top it up again. But I need to get that lot out of the pot. So tomorrow, Saturday, I'm off on a jolly. There's a place not too far from me. It's quite close to where my other Orchid Society meet, so it's not like an exceptional journey or anything, but it's called Hampshire Carnivorous Plants. Quite a large nursery with all those, you know, nepenthes and things like that, which personally don't interest me. I know they interest a lot of other people though. If the guy doesn't mind, I will film my visit so you can all have a look around that place. It's of interest to some, not to all. So if he doesn't mind, I'll film it. But what I'm going there for is some proper peat, which is now getting very difficult to come by, mainly for ecological reasons. A lot of the peat bogs and areas like that have been decimated to get that stuff into garden centres. Most garden centres now will not stock it because of those reasons. Yeah, trying to protect the habitat. So getting proper peat is now quite awkward. And the main guy who grows Disas in the UK is Dave Parkinson, and he over the years has tried many different alternatives to proper peat and basically has concluded they're nowhere near as good, and in some cases don't work. And the main reason, I can virtually guarantee, is most of the peat substitutes and stuff you get in garden centres has got nutrients in it, and that's the last thing a Disa needs. So I'm after some pure natural peat, and this carnivorous plants guy, spoke to him on the phone yesterday, he is of the same opinion. He now gets his peat from, I forget where he said, possibly Germany or maybe the Netherlands, I'm not sure, I've forgotten, but he's found a supplier where he can still get natural peat. And it's what he calls young peat. So it's not the stuff that's been formed over tens of thousands of years, it's newer, but it's still pure without nutrients in it, or next to none. So I need some of that, because that's what this plant needs. And then it's got to have some perlite and some chopped sphagnum in certain proportions, all mixed up nicely. And then I've got to get this bundle of plants out of the pot, and what I hope to do is remove the corm on the end of those flower spikes in both cases, but around those corms will be lots of new plants, yeah, with their own little roots, hopefully, fingers crossed. Those have gently got to be taken off to form their own separate plants. So what I'm going to do is pick on the 2 or 3, maybe 4 strongest looking growths that I've got in that pot, pot them up separately to bloom next year. And then all the rest of the plants, I'll make 1 or 2 community pots to grow those on for the following year. That's my theory. And there's some heavy advice coming from some good decent growers, one in particular. So I'm following in the footsteps of those who've been doing it for years and know what, in my opinion, know what they're doing. Plus the main man, Dave Parkinson, there's lots of advice on his website, Dave Parkinson Deesers. And yeah, so that's where we'll go with that. So that's just a chat on, you know, winter has started here in the UK now. You know, we're having a cold snap. Night temperatures are dropping right down. We did have a frost today and yesterday morning. That's not, it hasn't dropped below freezing, but it's got close enough to form a frost. The night temperatures have dropped off, but we'll get mild spells as well. That is just the way UK works. I mean, sometimes you can get a couple of weeks, you know, where the nighttime temperature stays up around 10, 11. You know, it just doesn't get cold. But when the weather's like that, it tends to be dull and miserable. So you lose your light. As opposed to the other types of days when it's flipping chilly, but it's crystal clear outside. Lovely bright blue sky, everything clear and fresh. And on days like that, the sun will hit the glass and warm it up in here at least during the daytime. So I have to work with the weather. Excuse me. Throat's drying up. So yeah, that's some thoughts about winter. Now I may not have covered everything because this is just one of my rambles, waffling, chatting, whatever you want to call them. So I'm quite happy for people to ask specific questions in the comments. If it's a type of plant I know nothing about, then you'll get an appropriate answer. I don't grow these, I don't know. And that saves a lot of typing as well. But if it's, you know, about things that I've got and things I may have missed, then chuck it in the comments. You know, we'll have a go and we'll see what we can do. But it's a troublesome time for a lot of people, especially if you're quite new to orchids and this might be your first winter, you know, and you're biting your fingernails down to the knuckles. Well, don't panic. Just remember, if your day lengths shorten, then your plants will slow up. If they slow up, they don't need as much water and feed. And quite honestly, the best light you can give them without burning them or getting them on glass and burning them through cold. Yeah, 2 types of burn, they look exactly the same, but cold burn looks exactly the same as sunburn, quite honestly. It's difficult to tell the difference, but you should know the difference because of what you did with your plant, you know, if you see what I mean. But watch out for leaves touching glass where that glass faces an outside temperature that could either get hot or cold. And I think the best thing I can say at the end of a video like this is good luck. Don't panic, think it through, and good luck. And let's hope everybody comes out the other end of their winter, however dramatic it might be, with some nice late winter, early spring blooms, and some plants that are not dead. I must admit, I don't think I've lost plants as a direct result of winter before. There's normally been some other ailment that the winter's just added to. You know, when the plant may have recovered faster or better if the temperatures have been a bit better. You know, they're all interrelated basically. So most people that have got dendrobiums, if they haven't ventured out into that sort of thing in a big way like I have perhaps, have probably got either Nobiles or the Phalaenopsis types. They're the common types. You find them in the garden centres and the big stores and things like that. Often in full bloom, you know. One thing I will say, if you buy a Nobile with a single cane, possibly a new growth and an old cane, that has a mass of blooms down the full length of that latest growth, don't expect to see it do that again in the near future. Yeah, they're forced into that position to look like that to make you buy them, and achieving that again is not that easy. You'll get blooms, but you probably won't get them to that level all at once. It's not that easy. Okay, and remember that your Phalaenopsis type dendrobiums will slow up. They don't want to get cold, not real cold. I mean, mine are still out here. I'm taking a bit of a risk. They probably would do better on the kitchen windowsill, quite honestly. But I've only got so much room indoors, and as soon as I separate plants away from here into the house, I generate a workload, you know, which I'm not prepared to do. My Phalaenopsis types have always done okay out here, so they're gonna have to rough it basically. But Phalaenopsis type dendrobiums are continuous growers, so they may slow up a bit in the winter, but they won't stop altogether. So they need slightly different treatment. I would suggest with your Nobiles, you keep them as cool as you can, you know, perhaps find a spare room, keep them cool, give them as much light as possible, and let them dry out thoroughly, and then give them a bit of water and probably no feed. That's your decision. Yeah. Mine still get a tiny bit of feed through the winter, but they get allowed to totally dry in between and left dry for a couple of days, depending on how quickly I remember to water them. It's not an exact science. Whereas my Phalaenopsis type, I let them get virtually dry. I try not to let them get bone dry, but it does happen. They don't die. But it's better if they are almost dry and then they get some water and low levels of feed. And out the corner of my eye, I think I've just seen I'm not sure whether I've seen that spike before, but that's one of my Phalaenopsis types. That's got a spike. That's got a spike. Not a brilliant one, but all my Phalaenopsis type dendrobiums are in a form of recovery. They all did really badly for nearly 2 years. I'm lucky I've still got them. But this year they've come on and they've put up some good strong new growths and some roots. So they've made it, they're recovering. But I don't expect marvellous spikes out of them this year. They'd better next year. So there we go. That's going round some of the types. Probably haven't covered every single one. And what I do for the winter. Now I have to stand back and qualify everything I've just said. This is a grow room. I've got high humidity. I've got little fans moving the air around, and I've got a big one that comes on if the temperature starts to climb. This is not a house environment, it's totally different. So when my plants are dry at the roots, the plant isn't really dry because my humidity very rarely drops down between lower than 70%. Yeah. At night, it's going up to 90, 95 at the moment, because obviously the temperature drops even more. But, you know, take it all and adapt it to your own environment. If you're growing in a house with a very dry atmosphere, you will need to water more often. Yeah? You know, your temperatures will be higher, otherwise you'll all be sat around in your coats, scarves and gloves and hats, which we don't do in the house, do we? Yeah, so think about your environment. In a house environment, you've got warmth, you've got drier air. Your watering frequency won't change that much. Yeah, and if you're growing under artificial lights, from my point of view, you're on your own, because I haven't got a clue. I don't grow that way. I adapt to my day lengths. Yeah, so take it all with a pinch of salt, adapt it, think about it, don't copy absolutely directly, because you could cause some problems. So yeah, just think about your plants, look at your plants, look at what they're doing, and adapt your watering and feeding accordingly. Yeah, And don't panic, you know. Just think it through. Think of that magic expression. Just use the logic. What's the plant doing? How can I help it? Simple as that. And don't panic. Okay, so that's that one. Chatty. And as I said, I'm in winter now as far as I'm concerned. So my winter care is up and running. Kit in the winter. My inlet fan down there is bubble wrapped. That's unplugged. That's done until the spring. My extractor fan is still on. When the sun comes out, my temperature starts to climb, and basically it can get too warm in here. It's too much of a difference between the night and the day. So that thing will kick in and suck out the warm air, and it'll get replaced by cooler air, you know, just generally. So that's that side of life. That runs on a thermostat. So when the temperature gets to a certain point, that kicks on. As it drops, it turns off. My little heater, that is an oscillating heater, but I don't let it oscillate because I don't want it pointing directly at plants. It's as far away from the plants as I can get it, and it's aided and abetted by that, which it does oscillate. So the idea is the heater comes on, pushes the air out here, which then gets completely stirred up by that, so that I don't get hot spots. That's quite a powerful fan. Both of those are wired together on a thermostat, little thermostat there. And as I said, that's set to 15 with a differential of 1.5. So when the temperature, the thermostat says it's dropped below 13.5 degrees C, those two kick on, raise the temperature, spread that heat around, avoiding hot and cold spots, I hope. And then as soon as it reaches 15, they shut down. So that's my sort of winter kit. My fogger is still on, and that's on a hydrostat. Now, on a bright sunny day, that may come on now and again. But let's put it this way, I haven't filled it for over a month. And it's used that much. It doesn't come on very often this time of year, but I don't remove it altogether because I don't want my humidity dropping down too much. So, good luck with your winter, and I hope everything goes well. And if you live in a country where there isn't really any winter, then this is all cobblers and you don't need to listen to any of it. Oh, I've just noticed out of the corner of my eye, Harvey Annam's just coming out again. Now that's a poor spike, but then that plant went downhill a bit and it's recovering nicely now, but that spike's only got 2 blooms on it. I wonder if I can zoom in. Don't normally zoom in. The light's not good at the moment, it's still quite dull. But it's just opening. Nice, frilly, lovely sunny yellow blooms. And any time of year that will bloom. As I say, for me, it's always been a bit of a show-off. It's been in bloom almost continuously. But it's having a bit of a lull at the moment while it recovers from being mounted and getting its new growths going. So, yeah, perhaps next year it will do its thing again. Okay, thanks for dropping by, and I'll see you next time. Any questions, chuck them in the comments. I may not be able to answer them, but I can try. Okay, bye for now.